Hey, hi Vivek, how are you doing?
Hi Asif, I'm doing very well. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, for helping us on this book. So, as you know, we are doing this interviews for the research part of the book. So, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into the questions, it'll be good if you can introduce yourself on how your particular journey has been from starting from accounting role to in the last few years you managed to move into transition into FP&A. So it'll be good to hear from you directly.
First of all, thank you for having me here. And yeah, about my journey. So first of all, let me tell about my experience. So in total, I have around 8 years of experience. So I started my career in 2015. It was in accounting profile with a BPO, and after that, I for approx 3 years I worked into accounting. And my transition to FP&A has been in a phased manner. So like after my first job, which was of around 3 years, I got into a role which included some kind of support to the onshore FP&A teams. From there, I got to know that there is something called FP&A, because though there were people on the client side who used to do that FP&A work, and we were supporting them by providing all the data. It was like supporting them into budgeting, providing them the numbers, and then finalizing or formatting their budget packs, etc. So from
Mhm.
there, I got to know about FP&A, and I found it this role very interesting. So I thought of like transitioning into that, and after that, I started building my skills. I worked on like my Excel skills, and then I started applying for the financial analyst kind of roles. Then I landed a job which was supporting the cost management team for a company. It was for the corporate head office of the company. From there, it was like I got into a more kind of FP&A role. I was doing some kind of budgeting. I mean, I was supporting them by inputting the numbers for the budgets. I was involved in the budgeting process, and uh, the controllers would ask for the analysis. So from there, it got more into FP&A. Yeah, so like this, in a phased manner, I transitioned into FP&A, and after that, it was complete FP&A. So in my fourth role, I got into core FP&A kind of role. I was there doing the forecasting. I was involved in budgeting, and yeah, now I'm completely in like core FP&A profile, and this is how my transition happened.
Were there any challenges that you faced during transition from accounting to the role that you mentioned, which was more on the, back end, and then you moved slowly and gradually to the FP&A business facing roles. So, were there any challenges that you faced? And if yes, could you please share them?
The main challenge, yeah, the very first challenge, as the both the fields were different. So yeah, concepts were totally different. In accounting, I was required to know about journal entries, balance sheet, trial balance, all these things, and in FP&A the things are totally different. So yeah, it was a challenge there. And after that, in FP&A roles, mostly the IC kind of roles are there. And before that, I'd worked in a team. So handling everything individually was a challenge, like time management, prioritizing things. These were a challenge. And gradually, I worked on these things and got over the challenges.
While you were in accounting, you were more working as a team, but when you start
Correct.
new in FP&A, you were more of a, at least during the starting time, as an individual contributor. Okay.
Yeah, so when I moved into my first FP&A role, so it was like my manager was sitting in Denmark, and other people so to whom I was supporting were also from different geographies. So yeah, it was a challenge. Like earlier, I had worked in teams only. I had no idea like how to work individually, because someone who is sitting in a different time zone has some expectations from you. Their ask can be like they can be multiple asks from
Mhm.
different sources, and prioritizing things were also a challenge. But later on, with experience, things got better.
So was working with people from different parts of the world, was it something different, or was that a challenge initially, or was that manageable?
Uh, it wasn't much challenging, but I would say like understanding the ask and requirements of different people is
Mhm.
crucial. And uh, in that role, I learned that before starting any task, know the ask very clearly. It doesn't happen that you have worked on something and later on may turn out that the requirement actually different. Yes, so people have like people in some countries they may be very particular to their work because so different countries have different kind of cultures, so that's different.
I
So
think you mentioned a good point, which is understanding the requirement in
hmm,
detail so that you
yeah,
do it right the first time. A lot of
hmm,
time, if
right.
you don't understand what is required, and if you guess, then probably you'll have
Hmm,
to redo it, or you have to make some back and forth, which is avoidable when you can understand the requirement.
yeah, and what happens in FP&A, you mostly work with the top level executives, directors, etc. So they, if you like, first you do something and then encounter some error, or they found some mistake, so then it does not create a good impression. It's ruins all the impression. So it's better to understand the ask first, then work on it.
Another question I have is, did you do any certification, any courses while you were doing the transition? Were there any learnings, maybe not certification courses, but maybe books? Are there any resources that you would recommend for somebody who is wanting to get into FP&A from accounting?
Yes, I definitely I did some certifications. One of which was the financial modeling, and
Mhm.
I did it from initially I did it from Udemy, and later on I did FMVA as well. At that time, Power BI was new in the market, so I learned Power BI, and company was also promoting it. So uh, I learned Power BI, which I think these days is very crucial for FP&A professionals. Other than this, I think understanding the FP&A concepts like budgeting, forecasting, knowing them in details, uh, that is also important.
So you mentioned financial modeling, Power BI, and then understanding FP&A concepts. How important is financial modeling in Power BI? So do you think it is a big part of your role? How important is that according to you in your FP&A role?
Uh, I think financial modeling, not everyone will be able to get an opportunity to build financial models in their FP&A roles. But what is it does, it gives you an understanding like how all the three statements are modeled. Because in big organizations, you're not going to uh, like build all the budgets and models on your own, because teams are quite big and they are scattered in various geographies. So you will play a small role there, but understanding like how you will play an important role there, it gives you a big picture. So yeah, financial modeling is important. I think this is one of the closest related certification to FP&A. And Power BI, I think yes, it is important because as I mentioned in FP&A, you deal with top level executives, you deal with directors, CFOs. So their Power BI plays a very important role because they are not interested in seeing the numbers. They are uh, I mean, they do not like unnecessary details. Visualization helps uh, them understand the things clearly, and Power BI these days is one of the greatest visualization tool. So yeah, Power BI can give FP&A professionals an edge to their career.
So both are important. So
Yeah.
one on the structuring models, and other on the presentation and. data visualization. All right. Now we move to the second part of the conversation, which is more on interviews. So more about interviews in terms of how can people prepare for interviews. So there are some questions on that. So the first one on the interview is how can we can talk about your experience. So while you were working in accounting, how did you manage to get into FP&A? So a lot of people find that difficult, which is getting an interview if they're working in accounting and audit roles. It's difficult for them to convince the interviewer to get the interview itself.
That's a real problem. I understand, and as someone who is working in accounting, yeah, they do face challenge to get even an interview call. So in that case, I would suggest uh, the very first thing to look at is their resume. In every role, so candidates might be doing some analytical work. They must be doing some analysis. I always recommend people to highlight those skills which are related to FP&A. Maybe not totally related, but somehow they might be doing some analysis. So highlight those things. They might be doing some reporting. So highlight that. So this kind of helps them link. To get their first interview calls, I think they can leverage their connections, their LinkedIn, because these days people do help on LinkedIn as well. If you ask someone for a referral, that can also help. Yeah, so getting your first FP&A job can be difficult, but it's not impossible.
Got it. Okay. So one thing you suggested was to relook at your resume and identify some skills that you can
Sure.
transferable,
Right.
you can show as transferable skills in FP&A.
Yeah.
And then best way is to find it through network, and LinkedIn is a good tool there. How do you prepare for interviews? So when you have to give an interview for say FP&A, is there a process that you follow which is helping you, or what would you do if you had to give an FP&A interview say next week? So what is your
uh, Whenever I get an interview call, so I start my preparation by reading the JD in detail. So that is something that gives you a lot of overview what kind of uh, work is there uh, in the organization that they are offering, and secondly, what type of people they are looking for. Secondly, research about the company, what their products are, what's their revenue, and I mean, if you are going for an interview, this is something which can be expected from everyone, that they have devoted some time to know the company, so know about the company. And if possible, if you can find the LinkedIn profile of the interview, go through that, understand their experiences. If you are able to see what they post, so yeah, so that can also help. So these are a few things, and yeah, and lastly, sharpening your concepts is the crucial thing.
thanks for that. So sharpening your concepts, understanding, I mean, who the interviewer is, so knowing the organization. I think those are great tips. How is your work look like in a typical day, month, and how's the work-life balance compared to what it was in accounting?
In accounting, mostly we follow the month end structure. So usually in accounting there is a lot of work pressure during the month end, because the books are closed at the month end. And during the month, people do reconciliations, they do some other kind of reporting. And in FP&A roles, once the books are closed, people do the analysis of the actual results. So, and there are variance analysis process, there are flash reporting, so those kind of things. So, yeah, so in my typical month, it would be like after the month end, there would be flash reporting when we'll be doing actuals versus budgeted, actuals versus forecast, variance analysis. And then after this process is done, then there is uh, forecasting for the next month, which would include revenue and GM forecast. And after that, there is some working capital forecast. And post that, there are analysis and reporting, which would be like some maybe ad hoc reporting, and some are monthly reporting. So this is how a typical month looks like.
Your role starts after the books are closed, and then there's reporting,
Right.
focusing,
Hmm.
and then analysis and other reports. How would you advise, so somebody, when somebody starts new in this, and the first few days are very crucial, because those that will decide how well the person will transition into this role, because uh, it takes time for somebody to get used to from the accounting mindset into FP&A, because in accounting there's some principal accounting standard checklist they follow, which is not present in FP&A. It's slightly more ambiguous and slightly more judgmental compared to accounting. So, what would you recommend as what should somebody do in the first few days, maybe 30, 60 days, so that they get a good hold of the FP&A role?
Yeah, so in first few days, I would recommend anyone to know the business very well, because in FP&A, you do a lot of reporting, and you deal with top executives, understanding the business, what their products are, how the revenue is driven, what uh, what is what affects their business, what who are their competitors, and there's so much to learn about the business. And trust me, this knowledge helps a lot. Uh, when you do reporting, when you speak to top executives, they talk about business, and if you are in those meetings and do not understand what they say, uh, so that's not going to create a good impression. So yeah, it gives an edge if you know in and out about the business. Secondly, I would recommend anyone to keep upskilling themselves. That you have recently transitioned to your a new role,
Yep.
which you were not part of earlier. So maybe there must be people who are there who are more experienced in that team. Ask them what kind of skills they think are important. Upskill on those skill set. Don't shy away from uh, asking questions. Ask as many as questions you can. Yeah, there's, as they say, there's no good or bad questions.
So let me summarize. So you mentioned understanding business is the most important thing. Then
Yeah,
learning from somebody who's there as a senior,
yeah, yeah.
and
Uh,
then also you mentioned asking questions. So when
yes,
you are
asking
new,
questions.
you can ask questions, but you may not get that opportunity, say after 6 months.
Ask good questions, and later on you will be expected to ask right questions. So initially, do people don't mind.
Now, I mean, if I have to ask you, this is very subjective. Okay, so this may be different for different people. So comparing accounting to audit, which one is more interesting to you? So do you find accounting more interesting, or is audit more? I'm sorry, is accounting more interesting, or FP&A is more interesting according to you now, because you've seen both the sides?
I would say FP&A is more interesting because here you get a lot of challenges every month. Uh, People will be asking for some kind of analysis. You get to deal with some new challenges every month, and you get to work with senior executives. You get to work with CFOs, directors. Yeah, so that gives an edge for you to prepare for your future roles. Yes, it is an interesting field, and it doesn't I think becomes mundane and after some time.
All right, so it's more challenging, and also you get to work with a lot of senior people. More value addition that you can do.
Right.
That is true.
Yeah.
Now, if I have to ask you, Vivek, so would you like to share any instance of an FP&A interview that you have given which went very well, or which did not go well, so that people can learn from either of it? The one that went very well, and what did you do there, and maybe if you want to share something that didn't go well, and what could have been done better.
Yes, so I would first go with an interview which didn't go well. So as I mentioned earlier in my yeah, introduction, that I transitioned in FP&A in phased manner. So like earlier, maybe in the first role, there was only 10% FP&A work, and then uh, later on I got into more supporting, and then in my third or fourth role I got into a core FP&A role. So while I was like transitioning from my in supporting role to a core FP&A role, I had an interview, and the interviewer was not convinced with my knowledge and the kind of experience he was looking for. And it is one of the challenge that even though you have knowledge, you may acquire theoretical knowledge, uh, people have to be practical, and I understand this is right thing to do, because they are looking for someone, and they have all the rights to do so. So they were looking for someone who had experience in FP&A. Even though I had the conceptual knowledge, I had read all the FP&A material, but uh, they were not convinced that I did not have practical experience. Yeah, so that's why I didn't get that job. And the one that went really well, it is my recent interview. I changed my job recently. It's been only 1 month in my new role.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was really good. It was because I previously it's been like 5 years now, and after like working in various FP&A roles, I have a very good understanding of FP&A field. So that experience helped me a lot. There were questions mostly around my experience. Uh, they asked what I do in my day-to-day roles. There were questions around budgeting. There were questions about the tools I used in my previous roles, and as I've worked in various companies, so the list of tools that I've worked on is also extensive. So that helped me a lot. So yes, my past experience helped me in this uh, interview a lot. In this interview, I could observe that their main focus was understanding what I've done in my previous roles, and they were trying to link it with their work.
So I think the one you mentioned was not good was because they were looking for some experience which they could not
Yes,
do in
I
your
did not have practical
in
experience.
your even though you knew about it, but they could
Right.
not find practical application.
Yeah.
But as in when you got more into FP&A, then you could
Hmm.
show that practical application, and that's
Yeah.
that where things go went well.
Yeah. So
And
in both the interviews, my practical experience has played like important role. When I did not have it, it didn't go well, and when I had it, it went really well.
thanks for that. Now, maybe this will be the last question, and we'll wrap up our conversation today. So, if you have to take an interview, say for your team now, say if you hire somebody under you or to work with you, what are a few questions you will ask? Maybe 2 or 3 questions that you will ask to make sure that you get somebody in the team who is trustworthy and he'll get the he or she will get the job done. So are there any questions that you ask in interviews or any questions that you would like to ask to just check the knowledge and experience as you mentioned?
I were to take an interview, I will first the basic thing. I will test the basic accounting and FP&A concepts knowledge,
Mhm.
and secondly, I would check their Excel and analytical skills. Maybe I can do some. I can have a Excel assessment of the candidate, because Excel is something that I think the heartbeat of FP&A. And third thing would be understanding their attitude and their willingness to learn, because since they have got the basic skill set, so rest we can teach them, and if someone is willing to learn, then we can teach them.
So first is accounting and FP&A skills. So
Yeah.
how would you test that? So we'll go one by one. So how would you? So what is one question that you will ask that test that, or will it be a test which they have to undergo?
Yeah, in accounting, we have like journal entries and yeah, basic accounting terminologies we can ask. And about FP&A, the questions would be around budgeting, the types of budgeting, forecasting, the difference between budgeting and forecasting, if the person has knowledge of types of variances. So these are the basic
I mean, asking basic questions about
questions. Yeah.
accounting, FP&A, journal entries, for example, or budgeting or forecasting. All right. And Excel you mentioned, which will be probably a test they have to undergo. And what was the last thing you mentioned? I think you mentioned ability to learn.
Yeah, willingness to learn. I would like to check that.
How would you check that? Would it be through a question or would it be generally through the interview observation?
I think one good indicator of the learning attitude is the kind of certifications one do. So if a person is doing some certifications, even though they are not into FP&A, but they are trying to like grasp that knowledge and certificates they're getting. So I think it shows their willingness to learn, and rest the attitude can be tested during the conversation.
Thanks, Vivek. I think that brings us to the end of today's conversation. Before we let you go, if you could let our listeners, viewers know how they can reach out to you. So if they have to reach out to you for any questions, is there a way they can reach out to you, maybe LinkedIn or any other way?
Yes, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I think if they try to search on LinkedIn Vivek Sharma, I can, my profile can easily be found.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we'll put the link also so that they can reach out if they want to.
Sure,
Thank you so much, and I'm sure this will help a lot of people.
sure.
And we'll again chat soon, Vivek. Thank you so much. Bye
Thank
bye.
you so much, Asif.